Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me for the first webinar we're running of my Intro to Public Speaking session. Let's try that one more time. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much for joining me. This is the first webinar of my public speaking session. And today we're going to focus on looking at abstract writing and submitting to speak. So for those of you watching us on YouTube later on, this is going to be a bit boring. But for those of you watching live, can you just give me a thumbs up or a hello if you can see me and if you can hear me okay? If you can't see and hear me, everything's going to be just fine. We are also going to run this again later, and we're going to go ahead and put this up on YouTube. So hello, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to be talking to you over the next couple of weeks about public speaking. But today, we're really going to focus about getting your ideas out on paper and writing a good abstract. If you're looking at this later on, you can find me on Twitter, or those of you watching live, you can yell at me on Twitter, or find out more contact details at jessica.tech. So to give you a little bit of my background, if you're sort of clever, skeptical people and you're wondering, why on earth is this lady telling me about public speaking? I've been working in technology and developer relations for quite some time. I must have given 400 or 500 conference talks and 50 plus keynotes all around the world. It's been really, really wonderful. And I've taken some time to work with some really fantastic coaches. I've been doing more one-on-one time helping people get started in public speaking. And I thought it might be easier to go ahead and run some webinars and try and help more people instead of doing one-on-one time and wearing myself out. Just for some housekeeping, if you're watching us on YouTube, again, this is going to be a little bit boring, I'm sorry. But if you're live, you've already probably discovered that there's a chat box right up here. That's a fantastic way to say hi to other people or to yell at me and let me know what's going on. One thing I'd really recommend taking a look at is the Ask a Question tab down at the bottom. If you really have a valuable question and you want to make sure that I answer it or someone else answers it, ask it down at the Ask a Question tab, and we'll be covering all of those at the end of the talk. All right. The first thing I want to go ahead and talk to you all about is where can you speak? So I'm talking to you all from a technology perspective, mostly speaking at meetups and conferences. But I went ahead and polled the audience before we started, and we found that we've got about 60% of people attending this webinar live wanted to speak at an industry conference. Whereas we've got a couple people who are speaking at an academic conference, looking for local meetups, or even looking to get into online events or blogging. And a lot of you seem to be really interested in making sure you do a great job at internal work presentations. So just to give you an idea of where you can speak, if you give a talk somewhere, if you give a talk at a meetup, you're absolutely able to reuse that talk at an industry conference. If you're an academic in a specific area, if you give a talk at an academic conference, you can go ahead and repitch that for things in your industry. What I'd really, really encourage you to do is take a look at where you want to speak, but at the same time, have a think about reusability. You probably can't give the same talk at the same meetup or the same talk at the same conference, but you can go ahead and use the same talk multiple times around conferences. If you speak at ABC conference last month, you can still talk at DEF conference a month from now. You can use the exact same talk and everything's fine. So when you're looking to speak, if it's something that involves the application process, I've had a lot of people ask what the application process looks like. And generally speaking, this may not be true for everyone. Most application processes for academic conferences, for industry conferences, and even for many meetups, the first thing you're going to need to do is research your events. If you're in this webinar, you've already got a pretty good idea that you want to start public speaking. That's fantastic. The next thing you're going to want to do is research events. If you're in technology, things like papercall.io might be a great place to start. But have a look at who do you admire? What conferences have they spoken at? Where might you want to speak? Once you research those events, you're going to have to submit your bio, a summary of yourself, and an abstract of your talk and talks to those events. The next step is the scary part. The people running the conference or running the meetup are going to take all of the talk ideas they've had submitted to them, and they're going to go make a decision. Sometimes they'll anonymize your identifying details so they won't know who you are, and sometimes they don't. But you've just got to wait until the event gets back to you and lets you know whether or not they're going to have you speak. But to do any of this, a big step is to write an abstract to let people judge whether or not they want you to speak. When you're researching your events, have a think about some of these factors. If you're a new speaker, what's the maximum size you're comfortable of? Do you want to speak at a meetup of 10 or 12 people to get started? Or do you want to be brave and terrifying and get on a stage for 500 right from jump? One thing I really encourage new speakers to do is to start off with a very short speaking slot. Lightning talks are very short talks, usually 5-10 minutes, and they're a fantastic way to get started speaking. Especially if you're a little bit nervous, short speaking slots are a great way to get started. And this might be a little bit strange, but have a look at the reputation of the conference. Some conferences get a bad reputation by being overly expensive or being low quality. And talk to other speakers if you can. Some have a reputation of treating their speakers terribly. And the next point is difficult because if you're speaking in an academic conference, oftentimes you're paying to speak. You're paying an organization membership, you're paying for an event ticket, you're paying your own travel, or your university is. If you're speaking at an industry conference, especially within technology, I'd really encourage you to make sure that they're paying for you to travel. If you're speaking at an industry event within tech, unless it's a small community event, you should never be paying to speak. Conferences often have, and should make clearly available, a budget for you to travel, a nice hotel to put you up in. Don't be afraid of asking for these things if they're not listed on their website. Ask for them if they don't list them, even if you're a first-time speaker, even if you don't feel like you deserve it. You absolutely deserve the support they're giving their other speakers. Just ask. All right, we're going to dive in. And this webinar, we're going to do it a little bit interactively. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is an abstract. An abstract is a short written summary of the talk you'd like to give. So it's just a little sort of TLDR, a little blurb about what your talk is going to be about. You can either write your talk first and then write your abstract about what it's going to be. But what I do is I tend to write an abstract for a talk idea, a talk I'd love to give. And then I submit that to a conference or a few conferences. And one thing to remember is conferences and meetups get a lot of submissions. I've been speaking for 5 or 6 years, and I'd say that my acceptance rate is still right around 10%. Don't just apply for one conference and pin your hopes on it. If you really want to get up on stage, and if you really want to start conference speaking, go ahead and put your abstract a few places. But I like to write an abstract first, give it to a few conferences, and then if they decide to take my abstract, they decide they want me to speak. If it's a new talk, then I'll go ahead and build out my talk from the abstract. You can do an abstract before you write your talk or after. It's all about what you're the most comfortable with. Multiple submissions are really important. If you've got a conference you're dying to speak at, some of the best conferences I spoke at in the last couple of years were, I loved Scotland JS, which is a JavaScript tech conference up in Scotland. And I really loved Frontiers, a web conference out in the Netherlands. If I wanted to try and speak at them again, or if I wanted to try and bully you to speak at either of those, I'd really recommend submitting multiple talks. Most conferences and most meetups are super okay if you submit more than one talk idea. But make sure your talk ideas are a good fit for them, and you're not sort of spamming them. You're giving things that are valuable for them and really valuable for their audience. So what I want to do, and I want to do this in an interactive way, is I want not only to show you some examples of abstracts, but I want to show you how you can find your own examples of abstracts from working from. This should load. Oh, I hope this loads. So this is the schedule for CodeMotion Milan. And this is the last conference I spoke at back in November of last year. And looking at the schedule, we've got a bunch of different talks. Folks who are watching this live, can you give me an idea? Is there one of these talks you'd like to see an abstract for? We've got Git stories from the front line, Promote your open source projects with GitHub pages. Cool, Git stories. We've got some folks coming in on the chat box and saying they'd love to see promote your open source project with GitHub stories. And this is their abstract. So it says, we've got a really, really well descriptive title, promote your open source stories with GitHub pages. I know what this means. It starts with a really personal entreaty. You need a website for an open source project of which the code is on GitHub? GitHub pages might be a viable option. People are asking me to zoom in on the text, and I don't seem to be able to do that. I'm so sorry. Sorry about that. I can go ahead and link to these in the text. I'm absolutely rubbish. GitHub Pages allows you to build a site based on simple markdown text files and a sprinkling of magic stardust that you can pull in the changelog of your project from GitHub. You can show off a list of contributors to the project and more. Join me to learn what GitHub Pages are and how to get your project web presence going with a little effort. And this is a fantastic abstract. It's asking me a question. It says, hey, you, potential audience member, is this the problem you have? Here's a tool that might fix it. Here's a little bit of information around the tool. And here's what you're going to get. Join me and you'll learn what GitHub Pages are. Join me and you'll learn whether or not they're good for your project. So I think this is a fantastic example of a really good abstract. But at the same time, I'd really encourage you to take a look at other abstracts that are out there and what's going to be a good fit for you. Have a look at a bunch of different people and see what kind of style fits your style. You don't want to copy, you don't want to rip them off, but a little bit of an homage is okay. So we're going to do something really fun right now. And what we're going to be on the right window. And what we're going to do is we are going to work together. We're going to write an abstract very quickly in real time. So I'm going to use all of you here in the webinar now, and we're going to write out a couple of quick abstracts. And we're going to do it in the style that I like to generally do it. And improv style, I'm going to ask you for some ideas. The one thing I'd warn you is if you've got your one great idea, a fantastic talk, no one's ever thought of it, maybe don't give me that idea. Give me some ideas of things you might be fun or funny to write about. They don't need to be about technology and they don't need to be about anything. But we're going to work together and I'm going to show you my working pattern for this. So over here in the chat box, what do you think we should write an abstract about? And give me some non-technical ones, please, if you don't mind. Pretty please. So I've got soft skills for total jerks. I love that one. As a little bit of a jerk myself, let's put that one down. And what I really like to do is when I first start out, if those of you can't see, if you can't see very clearly, there should be an option to turn your view to full screen and give you a much better view of this. For those of you watching on YouTube later, I'm going to go ahead and make this Google Doc available to you. And we've got someone else with an idea how to take notes. And I like to just go ahead and add a couple of points. So some blank bullet points to kind of freak me out. So those of you here in the audience right now, what kind of things should you or should I talk about? What should a talk about soft skills for total jerks have in it? I know it's like being back in school. I'm asking you to do all the work. I'm very lazy. Cool. So Veronica here in the chat is saying, what is a jerk? What are we talking about? Okay, so good people skills. What good soft skills are? What do we mean by soft skills? And so yeah, those of you who are watching this on YouTube are missing out a little bit. I'm sorry. We've got some great ideas. So we've got multiple people saying empathy. Is there anything else we want to cover? How does being a jerk impact your team? And examples of good and bad behavior. Examples of what soft skills can do for you, maybe? So this, for me, someone else has also pointed out that stories, that you want to have a personal story and a narrative. I think that's fantastic. We've got a couple different points here, and I think that this might be enough to turn into an abstract. So what I want to do here is I said, I've got an idea, or my lovely audiences have an idea, and I'm stealing this idea from them just temporarily. If anybody does want to write a talk about soft skills for jerks, go ahead and submit them quickly, because I think there might be more than one of you. And here, I've got a talk idea, soft skills for jerks. That's what I want to do. And I've got all of the points. What I want to do now is I'm going to break these down and turn these into a punchy, gently provocative abstract that I think conference goers will like. So we don't have to go in this order. I don't have to go one by one. So I'm going to ask a question. I'm going to open it up. I'm saying you, either the conference reviewer or you, if this is going on a website and people are deciding which talks they want to go to, I'm going to speak directly to the listener a lot of the time, directly to the potential audience. Are you a jerk? Soft skills, and I want to talk about what soft skills can do for you. Between getting your job done and making everyone hate you. So what are some examples of soft skills I might want to put in here? Soft skills, including things. So somebody in the chat has pointed out that you can do your job and have everyone hate you. I might very politely argue with that. If you're being a jerk, you're either limiting your own ability to get things done, or you're limiting the impact of your team, the sort of team's ability to do things and the team's ability to function. As someone else in the chat points out, you can do your job, but can you do it well? Could you do it better by not being a jerk or by having good soft skills? And this conversation is fantastic. So I'm going to steal this whole conversation and put in our abstract. This is a glorious look at what our potential abstract reviewer for an event might think of and what a potential audience member might think of. So this is really beautiful. I might write all of my abstracts by committee from now on. So soft skills, including things like clear communication, conflict resolution. Oh, and this is the worst webinar to do because I'm showing you all how bad I type when other people can see. And active listening. Give you the edge in business, give you the edge in your career. We'll look at how, and I'm going to steal this directly from the conversation during this webinar. We'll look at how soft skills can make the difference between getting the job done and doing a great job. Join us to learn how Join us to learn what? Dear audience, dear listeners, dear viewers, what do we think that what do we think the audience is going to be joining us to learn? Joining us to learn about how to the why and how. Fantastic. We've got Natalie suggesting that we want to invite listeners to join us to learn the why and how. Join us to learn how to develop the soft skills you need for your career and how they can help you. And to look silly, of course, I need to do that. And this is fantastic. The really challenging thing about writing an abstract is lots of different events want different things. For almost every conference, the things I've just put in bold, that would be enough. Most conferences, you can just send that off. Some conferences want to be a little bit more thoughtful. They say, well, you know, I want to see your abstract, something like this, a little short summary, but then also describe to us, speak directly to the reviewer to tell us what people will learn. And they may have fields asking you to tell them about what will people learn? What level should your audience be at? What, if it's a technical talk, what kind of previous knowledge do they have? What should people leave learning? So it is really not easy, but it is really tempting to develop a little abstract like this and just sort of want to assume it solves everything. But think critically in writing your abstract and in writing your talks. Who is my audience? What am I telling them? Why do I want to share this with them? And what's valuable? What, if they only listen to 1 minute of my talk, what's the message I want them to take away? Even if conferences or even if speaking opportunities ask you these other questions, if you've thought about this and you've built this into your talk process, you're going to be safe. Everything's going to be okay. So when someone asks, well, what's the audience going to get out of this? What are they really going to learn? You can come back and say, oh, well, they're going to learn about the value of soft skills. They're going to learn how to develop them in their own time, and they're going to learn how to use them at work. So we're aiming to keep these webinars very short, about 30 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and wrap up almost. In this webinar, we've gone ahead and looked at how to look at a conference, how to look at an event overall, what kinds of events you might be able to speak at, how to evaluate an event, and how to write an abstract. You've been so patient and so helpful, and our live viewers have done a fantastic job of helping me collaboratively write an abstract that I'd honestly be really comfortable with sharing with a conference. I want to take a few minutes now for question and answer. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube and you want to ask me some questions, I'm at Jesslyn Rose on Twitter. Have a shout at me and I'll try and answer your questions there. For the live audience, I'm going to address your questions right now, and I'm really excited that you all have been able to go ahead and ask me these. We've got a really great question from Liam, and Liam has got a question that's been plaguing me my entire life. Well, my entire speaking life. How do you find the right balance, the right level of detail to talk about your topic in detail, but not bore people with the basics? How do you balance not alienating newcomers, talking about it in an accessible way, but also making sure that there's overarching value for people who aren't newbies? Liam, this is a fantastic question. So here, I like to go ahead and paint a broad overview for my talks. If you write a really good abstract and say, you know, this is an introductory look at how to knit, or this is an advanced look at debugging these systems, someone looking at your talk should have a good idea of whether or not these should be a good idea. This talk would be a good fit for their needs. Sometimes, and I'm so sorry about this, you've got to be prepared to sort of ad lib. If you get to a conference or you get to a meetup and you notice that people all seem to be pretty advanced on this topic, be laid back, be ready to talk in more detail. It's a little bit like stand-up, well, not having done stand-up, it's a little bit like stand-up, I'm told. Respond to the audience. If folks look a bit at the introductory level stuff, go through that a bit faster. But at the same time, don't be worried about being too basic. a lot of times I've looked at a really 101 level talk that I didn't think I would learn anything. And I've realized that, oh dear, I didn't know that term, or I didn't fully get that concept. For me, I always err on the side of making it accessible to more people than trying to make it as valuable to the experts. Oh, wow. So Lee has got a fantastic question on how do you book your first paid talk? How do you get paid to speak? And how do you sell yourself when you have no experience? And Lee, I'm sorry, you might not like this answer. I think that when you're first starting out, getting paid to speak is very, very challenging. So once you've spoken a few places, once you've warmed up your skills, once you're ready, speaking to a agent to deal with you as a speaker is one route. Or if you're in the technology industry, going into a field like developer relations where you're paid to present publicly can be really good. Some conferences and some events do offer an honorarium or speaker's fee. One of the things I found most refreshing is the same way you just need to ask to see if people will pay your travel, ask to see whether or not they have a speaker's fee. The first time you ask is scary, but if you don't ask, they can't pay you. All these questions are really wonderful. We've got a question from Hannah saying, how do you find out the reputation of a conference? So I like to ask around. I also really like to check out social media. Check out the conference's social media thread. Are they being considerate to other people? Are they answering questions? Are they open? Are they honest? Look at videos of past talks and past conferences if they're available. Check out and see if anybody running the conference, the organizers are often listed on the website. Check them out, do a little recon and see if any of them are visibly jerks on social media. See if they're people you don't want to work with. And also ask around, looking at past years and past speakers. Is there someone you can reach out to say, hi, my name is Jess or Hannah. I see that you spoke at this conference last year. I was wondering, how did you like it? How'd that go for you? Oh, and we've got somebody in the chat box pointing out that you may want to Google specific issues. So Google conference name and harassment might be a really good way to see if there are issues. Mirjam has got I'm so sorry. I promise I'm going to stop saying fantastic, but a really, really focused, really wonderful question. And they're asking if I have any tips on how to find out what topics could be interesting for a certain audience or a certain format. And this is going to be a combination of research and trial or error. So if you're talking to a group that you belong to, if you're a nursing student and you're going to be talking to other nursing students, you can use your good judgment a little bit. You can also ask your peers. But if I'm a nursing student and I'm coming to a conference to talk what would be a cool place for a nursing student to speak? I'm coming to talk to the manufacturers of medical devices at a conference. I might want to do some research. I might want to look at what kinds of topics are generally accepted there. And I might want to reach out to some people and say, hi, I see you work for a manufacturer of a medical instrument. I'm going to be speaking at a conference for you all soon. What kinds of things would you be interested in? What kinds of things would be valuable? For formats, it's a little bit trial and error. Learning that maybe trying to do a live code demo during a 5-minute talk, I'll give you that one for free. But sometimes you've got to put yourself out there and see what works for different formats. Oh, I'm going to come up here. And I've got a question that I feel is sort of targeting me because I feel a bit guilty. Am I a fan of first person and abstracts? Join me, join us. And JT is pointing out that it always rubs them the wrong way. JT, I'm so sorry. I do absolutely love it. For me, I've done I really love to collect data. And for me, working in technology, I've found that writing an abstract with soft first person generally has better acceptance rates. It may well be that I write abstracts in first person when I like the abstracts more because I love writing in first person. If you don't like writing in first person, if you don't want to say join me or join us or let's, don't worry about it. Public speaking is all about finding your own voice. You're going to come on and say, hi, I'm me. Let's do things my way. Let's do things my style. Don't write abstracts to sound like me. I'm sure that your own voice is going to be way more valuable for you. Tyrone, you've asked whether or not you can play this back for a colleague. You absolutely can. I'm going to make this video available on YouTube, or you can find it here on Crowdcast for the next few weeks. If anyone's looking at listening to this live, I'm also super happy to rerun this. Fantastic. And James has got a question on whether or not I'm going to be running these webinars regularly. I absolutely am. So if you join us here next Thursday, we're going to be giving our next Intro to Public Speaking talk. I'd love to see you all there. But if you go to crowdcast.io / ooh, that's a good question. Let me make sure I'm giving you the right domain. If you go to crowdcast.io / Jess Lynn Rose, JESSLYNNROSE, you can see all of the webinars I run. And I tend to run them maybe once a week, maybe every other week, unless I go on holiday. We've got some really fantastic questions and I really appreciate it. For those of you who are still live, I want you to do me a huge favor. Could you go ahead in the question and answer box and let me know what time zone you're in? So just say, Jess, could you do a conference in my time zone, ? I'm really interested in making sure that I'm targeting these better for people. So let me know and say, hey, I'm in GMT, or I'm in San Francisco. After work, before work works best for me. If you let me know in the chat box, I would be so delighted to try and target things for you. So let me know what time zone and sort of what time works best for you. Before work, after work, lunch. I'll try and experiment a little bit. For those of you listening sort of after the fact on YouTube, thank you very much for being so patient with the weird interaction with the live audience. If you'd like to join us live, again, it's crowdcast.io / JESSLYNNROSE to participate in a live webinar. And thank you all very much for joining me. I appreciate it, and I hope you all have a lovely morning, evening, or afternoon. Thank you all again.